Hillstead Museum in Farmington, Connecticut is a place where art and nature flourish together, just as the family that designed this estate intended. Hillstead is a colonial revival house built at the turn of the 20th century and maintained today just as it was when the family that built it lived here. Hillstead is their outstanding art collection. Hillstead is 150 acres of fields, trails, and scenic views. Hillstead is May Market and other seasonal events for the whole family. Hillstead is also a beautiful sunken garden, the site of the annual Sunken Garden Poetry Festival. This program and the ones that follow are an invitation to you to attend this summer's series of poetry and music events. Mimi Madden is the festival's artistic director.
If you're one of those people who encountered poetry back in high school and found it dull or obscure, you should try visiting Hillstead Museum on a summer evening and experience poetry in a whole new way. Every other week in the summer, hundreds of people converge at this beautiful estate in Farmington, Connecticut, to hear some of the best poets in the country read poetry that is relevant and accessible. Audiences love the informality and outdoor setting of the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival. You can bring lawn chairs or blankets, pack a picnic, or buy dinner and wine from the festival vendors. There's an hour of live music first, anything from jazz to folk to classical. And then you can hear some of America's foremost poets read their work in the quiet of a summer's evening. The festival's ongoing popularity is evidence that poetry still holds an important place in American culture, and that poetry has a unique power to remind us of our common humanity. For this series of television programs, we have selected readings from the summer of 2012, our 20th anniversary season. We hope they'll give you an idea of what it's like to spend an evening in our garden, and we hope that you'll join us in the summer of 2013 to hear the featured poets. Pulitzer Prize winners Tracy K. Smith and Philip Schultz, the human rights advocate Carolyn Forche, Cuban-American poet Richard Blanco, and the well-known and well-loved Billy Collins.
So here I am, I'm the representative of American poetry. By which I don't mean I'm the most prominent member of American poetry, but I am the advertisement for poetry tonight, which means that I want to bring you good stuff, so that you'll read more contemporary American poetry. One of the great achievements of American culture and the 20th century, really. It is wild and beautiful in ways that you would never suspect until you become familiar with it. And wouldn't it be great if at graduations people said, valedictorians said, "I have some bad news for you." Not all of you are going to succeed in the achievement of becoming a human being. You know, many of you will, and you will never know what your failure was. So a little more hard truth, you know, to sort of season us. And this is one of the sort of missions that I sort of think of belonging to poetry. So I'm going to start by reading a poem which is about shopping. I leave the connections up to you. I sometimes live in a summer town where a tourist town where the streets are open for shopping, and this is sort of both about the joy of summer and the sort of dark undersurface. Summer. The tourists are strolling down Alpine Street, hoping for a deal on hand-carved rocking chairs, or some bronze Kali Yuga earrings from the local yak arts dealer. It's summer. No one needs therapy for now. Or a seminar in modern fragmentation, laughing as they walk past the acupuncture center. and Orleans fish and chips, then double back to the Omega store to look more closely at those shoes. People like to buy. They just do. They like the green tissue paper. They like extracting the plastic card from its tight prophylactic sheath, handing it over and getting it back. They like to swing the bag when they stroll away. They like to stash the box in the car. A 40-year-old man stares at a wetsuit on the rack. Is it too late to dress up like a seal and surf? As the beech tree in front of the courthouse suddenly fluffs itself up and flutters, and a woman with a henna rinse holds a glass vase up to the light to see the tiny turquoise bubbles trapped inside. As a child, she felt a secret just inside her skin, always on the brink of bursting out. Now, the secret is on the outside, and she is hunting it. This is a poem which is a romantic poem. It's a poem about an early stage of romance. And two people who have been on a date, their second date or their first date, they've been to see a nature documentary, which is, I know, an odd kind of choice for a first date. And it's one of those nature documentaries in which the mating habits of all the different kinds of animal species, it's a PBS kind of production. So I know this crowd should feel comfortable with it. And I hope you remembered to give something during the recent fund drive. So they've been to see this nature documentary, which is about kangaroo rats and, red foxes and praying mantises and their various kinds of mating habits. And it's kind of gotten inside their heads, and it's sort of confused them about the proper human procedure for mating. The poem's called Romantic Moment. After seeing the nature documentary, we walk down Canyon Road onto the plaza of art galleries and high-end clothing stores, where the mock orange is fragrant in the summer night. Where the mock orange is fragrant in the summer night. I don't know the name of that bird. But it sounds like a really big one, doesn't it? After seeing the nature documentary, we walk down Canyon Road onto the plaza of art galleries and high-end clothing stores, where the mock orange is fragrant in the summer night and the smooth adobe walls glow flesh-like in the dark. It is just our second date. And we sit down on a bench, holding hands, not looking at each other. And if I were a bull penguin right now, I would lean over and vomit softly into the mouth of my beloved. And if I were a peacock, I'd flex my gluteal muscles to erect and spread the quills on my Cinemax tail. If she were a female walking stick bug, she might insert her hypodermic proboscis delicately into my neck and inject me with a rich hormonal sedative before attaching her egg sac to my thoracic undercarriage. And if I were a young chimpanzee, I would break off a nearby tree limb and smash all the windows in the Plaza jewelry store. And if she was a Brazilian leopard frog, she would wrap her impressive tongue 3 times around my right thigh and pummel me lightly against the surface of our pond. And I would know her feelings were sincere. Instead, we sit a while in silence until she remarks that in the relative context of tortoises and iguanas, human males seem to be actually rather expressive. And I say that female crocodiles really don't receive enough credit for their gentleness. And she suggests that it is time for us to go to get some ice cream cones and eat them. So this poem is about a moment which I think is utterly familiar to all of us, who have given care to another person. And if it isn't familiar to you already, don't worry, it's on your dance card. And it's sort of about the moment, a really kind of a period of my life when I was taking care of my mother who was dying. The poem's called Lucky. If you are lucky in this life, you will get to help your enemy the way I got to help my mother when she was weakened past the point of saying no. Into the big enamel tub, half filled with water, which I had made just right, I lowered the childish skeleton she had become. Her eyelids fluttered as I soaped and rinsed her belly and her chest, the sorry ruin of her flanks, and the frayed gray cloud between her legs. And some nights, sitting by her bed, book open in my lap, while I listened to the air move thickly in and out of her dark lungs, my mind filled up with praise, as lush as music, amazed at the symmetry and luck that would offer me the chance to pay my heavy debt of punishment and love with love and punishment. And once, I held her dripping wet in the uncomfortable air between the wheelchair and the tub, until she begged me like a child to stop. An act of cruelty, which we both understood, was the ancient, irresistible rejoicing of power over weakness. If you are lucky in this life, you will get to raise the spoon of pristine, frosty ice cream to the trusting creature mouth of your old enemy. Because the taste buds, at least, are not broken. Because there is a bond between you. And sweet is sweet in any language. I'm actually becoming a nature poet. I wanted you to be the first people to hear it. So the poem's called Barton Springs. Oh, life, how I loved your cold spring mornings, of putting my stuff in the green gym bag and crossing wet grass to the southeast gate to push my crumpled dollar through the slot. When I get my allotted case of cancer, let me swim 10 more times at Barton Springs, in the outdoor pool at 6 a.m., in the cold water with the geezers and the jocks, with my head bald from radiation and my chemotherapeutic weight loss, I will be sleek as a cheetah. And I will not complain about life's pedestrian hypocrisies. I will not consider death a contractual violation. Let my cancer be the slow-growing kind, so I will have all the time I need to backstroke over the rocks and little fishes, looking upwards through my bronze-tinted goggles into the vaults and rafters of the oaks as the crows exchange their morning gossip in the pale mutations of early light. It was worth death to see you through these optic nerves, to feel breeze through the fur on my arms, to be chilled and stirred in your mortal martini. In documents elsewhere, I have already recorded my complaints in some painstaking detail. Now, because all things near water are joyful, this might be the time to catch up on my praise.
This is, as Jen remarked, a remarkable place. Poetry is an intimate art. It's something that many people, often those who would never admit it, enjoy privately, take to heart, say to themselves, read alone. But there are very few places in our culture where we come together around poetry. And a poem is held up in the light of the community, and we see what it means to us collectively. It's an incredible honor for a poet to see his or her audience. And not only that, you're in this beautiful garden where my dog is doing his best to wreck the Japanese anemones up front. And it just seems utterly remarkable to me. So you heard Indra do that remarkable cover of David Bowie's Heroes. It was extraordinary. And in that song are the lines that go, I remember standing by the wall, the guards shouting over our heads, and we kissed as though nothing could fall. Hearing that made me want to read you this poem. This was composed in a strange circumstance. This was commissioned by the New York Times, who asked a number of contemporary poets to write poems in honor of the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And being pleased to be asked, I said, sure. And then I tried to write a poem about the fall of the Berlin Wall. I've never been to Berlin. I have no personal association with the wall. I was ready to call them and resign. I didn't see a way to do it. And then a friend showed me some photographs of those temporary walls that they throw up around construction sites in the city, covered over with permits and graffiti and advertisements, and something began to shift. This is called the lesson. Some workers put up a wall on 25th Street, plywood sheathing a frame of 2x4s to seal the building they'd gut and remake. Then they added layers, stacks of metal pipe bound with black webbing, a layer of permits, photocopied signatures far removed from whatever hand inscribed them. Then a blue expanding ladder, hydraulic, squatting on its haunches. My friend John took pictures of the whole unlikely and elaborate composition, barrier and palimpsest, warning and advertisement. How could you not look at it with its tears and concealments? And though such photos might allow us to stand at an annealing distance from the wreck of things, I think his do something else. In this way, I began to look at walls. Decaled plexi between my face and the back of the cab driver's head. Blue shroud on 16th, like the robe of Venus rippling over the entry of Pottery Barn. And inside it some bird grinder, scouring away at the stone. The insidious barrier, who could put their hands on it, dividing me and the dark young men under the scaffolding near my corner, smoking by the door of the technical school. All going back somehow to the story one of my teachers told, voice slipping to a register we'd never heard in our room's calm rows. How a lover, desperate to reach the beloved on the other side, strapped himself to the underside of a car, face pressed up into the undercarriage, the back of his head inches above the pavement. How he tried to refuse, with his own body, the sundering of his city. Did he live? Did he ever arrive? I remember only my teacher beginning to weep, and we children in our low-slung new school building in Tucson, the desert freshly scraped to make way for us, we didn't understand. What was the lesson? John's pictures brought that back. And how, decades later, the night they first scaled the wall, the people at the top reached down to pull up the others and shouted, "Come on, come on." When the guards turned the water cannons on them, they sprayed back from open bottles of champagne. Then the broken chunks appeared in the hands of those who had loosened them. Fragments of concrete glazed with spray paint inscriptions, scarred with sledgehammer and chisel, instruments of union, a demanding beauty about them. Whatever was scrawled, perhaps capable of realigning as words in what language? Something barely spoken yet. So, having written a good many poems about dogs in which a dog did something intriguing which became the occasion of a parable or sort of moral or psychological fable, I swore off, no more dog poems, which lasted into Ned's adolescence. And then I tried to resist. Deep Lane, June 23rd, evening of the first fireflies. We're walking in the cemetery down the road, and I look up from my distracted study of whatever, an unfocused gaze somewhere in the direction of my shoes, and see that Ned has run on ahead, with the champagne plume of his tail held especially high, his head erect, which is often a sign that he has something he believes he is not allowed to have. And in the gathering twilight, what is it that is gathered? Who is doing the harvesting? I can make out that the long horizontal between his lovely jaws is one of the 4 stakes planted on the slope to indicate where the backhoe will dig a new grave. Of course my impulse is to run after him, to replace the marker out of respect for the taboo that we won't desecrate the tombs, or at least for the particular knowledge of those who knew the woman whose name inks a placard in the rectangle claimed by the 4 poles of vanishing. Well, 3 poles now. And how it's within their recollection, their gathering, she'll live. Evening of memory. Spark lamps in the grass. I stand and watch him go in his wild figure eights. I say, "You run, darling. You tear up that hill." The world, of course, began in a garden. Every creation story, the myths of Western culture tell us we started here. And every paradise, of course, has a flaw. This poem contains a notion that might be unfamiliar, Manichaeanism, which is an ancient theological idea that the world is divided equally into forces of dark and forces of light, forces of good and evil, and that we don't know which will triumph. Deep Lane. Into Eden came the ticks, princes of this world, heat-seeking, tiny, multitudinous. Lord, why have you given them a heart, a nervous system, a lit microchip of a brain, is it, if not to invite Manichaeanism? Hard to believe, the force that shaped the mile toward us, traversing the undergrowth with smallest steps, the sway-necked lily. Hard to countenance that same mind dotting paradise with pinhead demons wanting nothing but to gorge, to suck beyond the dreams of their hell brothers, the mosquitoes. Implacable, without boundary, pure appetite. I wouldn't know anything about that. South of San Francisco is an extraordinarily beautiful little town that lends this poem its name. It's called Pescadero. The little goats like my mouth and fingers, and one stands up against the wire fence and taps on the fence board, a hoof made blacker by the dirt of the field. Pushes her mouth forward to my mouth so that I can see the smallish squared seeds of her teeth and the bristle whiskers, and then she kisses me, though I know it doesn't mean kiss. Then leans her head way back, arcing her spine, goat yoga, all pleasure and greeting, and then good-natured indifference. She loves me. She likes me a lot. She takes interest in me. She doesn't know me at all, or need to, having thus acknowledged me, though I am all happiness, since I have been welcomed by the field's small envoy, and the splayed hoof, fragrant with soil, has rested on the fence board beside my hand. House of Beauty. In Jersey City, on Tonnelle Avenue, the House of Beauty is burning. On a Sunday morning in January, under the chilly shadow of the Pulaski Skyway, the House of Beauty is burning. Who lobbed the fireball through the glass? In among the creams and thrones, the helmets and clippers and combs, who set the House of Beauty burning? In the dark recess beside the sink, where heads lay back to be laved, under the perfected heads, rode along the walls, the hopeful photographs of possibility darken, now that the House of Beauty is burning. The Skyway beetles in the ringing cold, trestle arcing the steel river and warehouses, truck lots and Indian groceries, a new plume of smoke joining the others, billow of dark thought rising from the broken forehead of the House of Beauty. An emission almost too small to notice just now. Alarm still ringing, the flames new launched on their project of ruining an effort at pleasure. Glass jutting like cracked ice in the window frame. No one inside. The fire department on the way. All things by nature, wrote Virgil, are ready to get worse. No surprise then that the House of Beauty is burning. Though whatever happens, however far these fires proceed, reducing history to powder, whatever the House of Beauty made is untouchable now. Nothing can undo so many heads made lovely, or at least acceptable. So much shapelessness given what are called permanence, though nothing holds a fixed form. Bring on the flames. What does it matter if the house is burning? Propose a new beauty, perennially unhoused, neither the lost things nor the fire itself, but the objects in their dresses of disaster. Anything clothed in its own passage. Padded vinyl chair burst into smoky tongues. Lucite helmet sagged to a new version of its dome. Our black bridge, a charred rainbow on iron legs, two ruby eyes glowering from its crown. If beauty is burning, what could you save? The House of Beauty is a house of flames.